Hey y'all, it's your girl Blair with Cooking with Blair, and this is my easy Louisiana seafood gumbo recipe. So, we start off with the basics. So, this is shrimp that has been deveined and cleaned. This is about 8 crabs that have been cleaned and split, and a pound of smoked sausage. Okay, so this is actually a family pack of chicken thighs with the skin on. So first, I am going to put some peppercorn medley, which I love, onto the chicken. And you don't have to put a whole lot. We're going to mix this up in just a bit, but this is something that I always start with. I love a little spice, and why not put a little black pepper, some fresh black pepper that is. After that, let's add some granulated onion. So we're going to put that onto the chicken. Make sure you season that really well because we're mixing a lot of chicken here. And remember, there's skin on it, so we have to make sure it's mixed up well. Here's some paprika. Make sure you put a good bit of that. That's going to help with your browning. And I'll show you just what we're going to do with that as well. And I do add other seasonings to my mixture as well, but paprika is really going to help that browning process because you're going to cook this chicken in your stock pot. Okay, next is some garlic powder. Make sure you do the same thing, same process, get that all over. I like garlic powder, as you can see, but it's definitely something that we use a lot in our home. I love the taste. Hey, I am a Louisiana girl. Next is parsley. You can choose to use fresh parsley if you would like to, but when you're making gumbo, there's a lot of components that you have to, make sure that you do and put into this. And so to me, adding fresh parsley is just a bit much, but it's on you, it's your world. Next, I'm going to add some seasoned salt. You can choose to use some creole seasoning or something like that if you'd like to. I use seasoned salt at this point, so just to season my meat, and I will add different seasonings as we go along because I am making a lot of gumbo. We're talking about, it's about what, a 5-gallon pot, I want to say. So here's some cayenne pepper, and remember, this one is not that hot, so I am going to put it all over the chicken. So if you choose to use the regular cayenne pepper, do not do this. Only sprinkle a little because it will light your world up, okay? Now, make sure you mix that chicken up really, really well. It's a lot of chicken, it's a lot of seasoning, but it is just enough to get that thing going. Now, that's 1 stick of butter, medium-high heat at this point, okay? Put your chicken in. You can choose to put it not on the skin side down first. You see, I just threw mine in there because I was talking and doing all sorts of things when I was doing this. But you want to move that chicken around a good bit. You do not want it to stick to the pot. You do not want it to burn. This is my gumbo pot that I use, and you guys call it a stock pot. Normally, that's what it's called. But just make sure you continuously mix that chicken around while it's cooking. It's going to get a really good color because I've added paprika. Seasoned salt or seasoned all, it also has some paprika in it as well. So just keep that in mind during this process. You really don't have to cook it that long, and it's going to be cooking the entire time that you're fixing your gumbo. Okay, you're going to allow your chicken to cook for a while, and you can see there's some juices brewing there. So okra, this is about 2 bags of okra. So this is about 2 pounds. I am not going to use the entire amount. I usually just cook it down, and sometimes we'll use it for other things later. But about a pound is what you need, and you can actually use less if you prefer. It's really up to your liking. You do not want to overpower your gumbo with the okra, but I put mine in the oven on 350, and I actually put it in before I start cooking my chicken so it can cook down, and I continuously stir it, okay? So back to the chicken. While that okra is in the oven, it's gonna be in the oven about 25 to 30 minutes, depending on how much it needs to cook and how much of that slime I want to go away. So once you get to this point and your chicken is almost brown, you can start taking it out here. Do not dump what you have in your pot. This is some good juices from the chicken. This is some seasoning from the chicken. And it is also a little bit of broth. So what you're gonna do at this point is add your sausage to what you're already cooking. It is still medium high, so make sure you watch what you're doing. So once you add your sausage to the pot, just stir it around a bit. You don't want it to cook all the way through because it's gonna cook during this whole process. This is just kind of to get the cooking started. So at this point, when it starts looking like this, you know, it's almost cooked, it's like halfway there, you can take it out. You can choose to drain it at this point. I do not, because I want all of that flavor to go into my gumbo. So I just take it out. I do not drain any of it. I put it in a pan on the side along with my chicken. See? There's my pan. And see how much meat that is? So now I'm going to add my seasonings. So this is red, orange, and green bell peppers, okay? I will also put some onions in there, celery, and I'll put all of the details of how much in the description once I get to that point. But as you see, it's a beautiful medley of vegetables here. So there's green onion that I'll add later, and I'll just start cooking that up, okay? Back to the okra. So see, this is how you want your okra to look. Don't want it to be all icky and slimy. At that point, I've taken the okra out. So, as you see, I've added all of these vegetables. Here's my scallions or green onions, whichever you call them, and some white onion. I do not put a whole lot of white onion, but I do put a good bit of vegetables in my gumbo because I love that flavor. I really like it to be kind of like a full dish where when you eat my gumbo, you are going to fill up. You're going to get every part of what I put in there, from the vegetables to the meats to the seafood. You're going to get a hefty, hearty bowl, and you'll see that towards the end. Now, once you start cooking, this is what your veggies should look like. So you're still cooking this. You're going to cook this on a medium-high heat as well. You can turn it down if you need to, but once it gets to this point, you can go ahead and put your meat back into your pot. Do not drain your meat. That's just my opinion. People can do whatever they want. Everybody cooks gumbo completely differently. I'm from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, but my family is from Plaquemine, Louisiana mainly, and they're from what we call down the bayou, so we just cook a little differently. I mean, my grandmother pretty much grew up in an area where the bayou was literally across the street. And we just learned how to cook with a lot of seafood, you know. So when I was coming up, seafood was just not a weird thing for me. You know, we put it in a lot of dishes. But, you know, at this point, you know, this is what I do. You know, I leave my juices in there to get that extra flavor. Make sure I stir that around really well, because next you'll be adding some water or broth. In this case, I added water, and you're going to see I am going to season my food really, really well. So it's going to have a really good flavor. But some people add chicken broth. I do it sometimes if I'm just kind of being lazy about my dish. But this time I just went all out. I did my own thing. I left all my own flavors so it can all combine and just taste really well. So next, add some oregano. You're not going to add a whole lot. So this is just to give it an extra little kick here. As you see, this is how much I've added to the pot. And this is a huge pot. So that's it. Voila. Next, add some thyme. And once again, it won't be a lot of thyme. So there's my thyme. And this is all dry seasonings, as you can see. You can do fresh. But trust me, when you have finished chopping all of those vegetables, you will not want fresh seasonings anywhere around you other than those vegetables. And once you've cleaned those shrimp and cleaned those crabs. So here's some basil. I add a little bit of basil there because it gives it a great flavor, especially when you're combining these seasonings with the leaves, the bay leaves. So I add those as well. This is a pretty big pot, so I actually add 3 bay leaves to this particular mixture, and that way, it'll just merge with those other flavors. So 3 bay leaves because it's a huge pot. So just stir that around really, really well. So you're going to get all your seasoning into that mixture with your chicken and your sausage. Everything is going to be combined at this point. You can stir really well. And I do have fresh garlic in there too. So what I've done here is I've actually put some water in the pan that my chicken and sausage was in to just start that process of it cooking in that broth, and to give it that flavor that those things already had together. So it's making a broth. So I add that water, and what I do when I add water, I make sure I add water that will cover everything that's in the pot. It's actually going to be a little above what I have in the pot right now, and you'll see that I'm slowly adding the water in, and I'm stirring as I go along, just to kind of keep that mixture together, keep that flavor. And I just slowly add the water just that way. So go ahead and stir that around. Next, I am adding some cayenne pepper once again because I really like that extra kick. It's not gumbo if it doesn't have a little bit of spice to it, right? So I add more cayenne pepper because this cayenne pepper is just not that hot. And so I pretty much used a lot of my own seasonings. I'm combining a lot of seasonings with this particular gumbo. That's normally what I do though, because I love to get the different flavors together. I love to just kind of make my own mix and have my own flavor, and my gumbo typically tastes the same. I actually added some salt there too. This is kosher salt, and I'll show you the type of kosher salt that I use later, but I do add some salt. And you'll find when you only add water, you will have to add more seasoning versus using a chicken broth. Most chicken broth already has salt in it, so you don't really want to add much. Because right here, I'm actually adding some Tony Chachere's, and I'm not going to put too much because it's spicy too. So I'll add some Tony Chachere's here just to give it that added, Creole flavor, and then kind of go from there. Okay, at this point, you want to bring your gumbo to a boil because you're going to add your tomatoes. Now, these are stewed tomatoes, and this is the Italian recipe in particular. So with these tomatoes, it gives it a great flavor. It just kind of adds to what flavors you already have in the pot at this time. So that's why I typically choose to use that particular kind. You can use fresh tomatoes if you like to. I only put 1 can. I don't put any more than that because you don't want it to taste like a tomatoey concoction that you've made. You just want it to just kind of give it that little flavor of tomato, and to me it just tastes great. I love tomatoes in my gumbo. I absolutely love it. So now my pot has been boiling for a little while. Okay, it's starting to get that fast boil, and it takes a while because this is a huge pot, but here you can add your roux. So I add probably about 1.5 cups of roux because this is a really big pot. And the thing about roux, because it can settle at the bottom if it's not hot. My roux was not hot at this point. I didn't just finish it. So you are going to see me stir this pot a lot to make sure that roux is not sitting in the bottom. The one thing you do not want is for someone to get a bowl of your gumbo and get a big hunk of roux in their gumbo. So I add my roux very slowly, and I'm kind of just doing a spoon at a time. But I can kind of, gauge how much roux I need because I've been cooking it so long. But this is about 1.5 cups. total. So I actually put about 4 spoons of it, and this is a big spoon, a big wooden spoon. So yeah, it's about a cup and a half that I put in there, and I did make this roux myself, and I just refuse to like go through a video where I'm just cooking roux because it's such a long process. But maybe later I'll just show how and just kind of walk you guys through the process of what I do to get my roux to that color, because it takes a while to get it to that dark color without burning it. And a lot of people tend to burn their roux because they just don't take their time, and you really, really have to take your time with that roux in order for it to look like that and not be burnt. So next I add some browning seasoning because I do like mine a little dark. This is Kitchen Bouquet. So I'm only going to add a little bit because I wanted mine to be just a smidge darker than what it is. That is personal preference. You do not have to do this if you do not want to. This is just something that I added, and I wanted you guys to see the entire process. So that's why I decided to go ahead and show you what I added right here. Now you're going to bring it to a second boil, and this is to start adding your okra. That is a trick to not having slimy gumbo with okra in it, because what it does, it stops that slime. It cooks it really, really fast. And remember, we've already cooked this okra for about 25 to 30 minutes in the oven to get some of that slime out. But if you do not have your gumbo boiling, it will just sit in there, and that slime, sometimes it will just end up overpowering your gumbo, and you do not want that. That is gross. It will turn your gumbo green, and it's just nasty. So once again, I've only put about a pound of okra into the gumbo, maybe a little less than that, but I do not overpower it with okra. And another thing, add it slowly because you do not want it to cool off your pot and stop boiling at this point. So you see it's still boiling a little bit because I'm adding that okra a little bit at a time. I do not want it to stop the boil because I do not want that okra to stop cooking. I want it to continue to cook so it won't be slimy. So just keep that in mind whenever you put okra in your gumbo. That's something a lot of people do not know. Bring your pot to a boil again, and once you get to this point, you can start taking some of that skin out of your gumbo. This is totally optional. I know some people who love the skin and they'll actually eat it, but I'm that person who does not like the skin floating around in my gumbo, so I'll take it out. Now, at this point, you can continue to take that skin out. I will also sometimes remove my chicken thighs and take the skin off that way while it's still boiling, just so I would not have that floating around. I really don't like that. At this point, you can add your shrimp, and this is the last thing that you'll add meat or seafood wise. So at this point, you're going to add your shrimp, and then you'll add your crab. And the reason why this should be the last thing you add is because you do not want these two things to overcook. Your shrimp can get all rubbery, and your crabs can really lose some of the meat and also some of the flavor just from overcooking. Make sure you mix it all in really well. You want it to be covered by your gumbo and really just saturate it, because you're bringing it to a boil again to get this oil out of your gumbo. So at this point, the oil has risen to the top. It's a slow boil. You do not want it boiling really fast because you do not want to scorch your gumbo. So make sure you get all of this off. It takes some time sometimes because this is a lot of meat, but just take your time, and it should look like this once you skim it. So at this point, it's still boiling, and you can add your gumbo filet. So I add mine to the pot. This is Cajun Chef, the brand that I normally use, or I'll use Zatarain's. You can order this online. I did find that out. But I just sprinkle it on the top. It acts as a thickener as well. And filet is an herb. So it just combines with all of these other herbal flavors that you've added to the gumbo, and it just tastes amazing. So that's pretty much the last step. Once you get to that point, you can just cut this pot off. You do not want to overcook your food. So cut that sucker off. And look, every spoonful, there's a ton of meat and seafood in this pot. It tastes wonderful. It smells wonderful. It's just a great Louisiana dish, and it's something that we're known for. So go ahead and subscribe to my channel. I'll be sure to update you guys with more recipes and more great content. Have a great day.